I am concerned that my party, looking at the fact that reformers got these MPs now, looking at the votes they're getting, will think the way to contest reform is to copy reform. And I think that is a political dead end.
That voice is, of course, Mother of the House, Diane Abbott, a long-standing MP. It was recorded in early May at a special panel convened by Stand Up to Racism. The May elections saw Reform UK take another leap forward in British politics. So how have we got here, and what does it mean? Over the Top and Under the Radar is grateful to share that conversation between Diane Abbott and myself with you. Samira Ali hosted the panel with myself and Diane.
Okay, my name's Diane Abbott, Member of Parliament for Hackney North and Stoke Newington, just round the corner, really. I would just like to say, for a few words, that we have to put this in an international context. We're seeing in France and in Germany the rise of far-right parties, unprecedented numbers of MPs from far-right parties. In Italy, the Prime Minister, Giorgia Meloni, her party is, it's literally a neo-fascist party. Literally a neo-fascist party. And I was a little bit alarmed, but I think one of the first foreign trips that Keir Starmer did was to go and see her. I'll come back to Keir Starmer in a bit. But no, it's all happening in international context. And of course, what's happening in the United States. Because Trump is blatantly racist. They are threatening to take money away from universities if they are doing too much about DI, what they call DI, anti-racism. They are trying to stop, and are successful in stopping, some big companies not to spend money on DI, otherwise they're going to lose government funding. So you've got the rise of the far right politically in Western Europe. You've got the rise of the right in America. There's always been a right in America, but not as blatant as Trump is. And he's actually threatening people in terms of funding, in terms of support, and so on. And that is the context in which we're seeing the far right in this country. And my concern is partly, they've got 5 members of parliament, just unprecedented for a far right party. But I'm concerned they'll get more members of parliament. But I'm even more concerned that they will drag the political debate in this country further to the right. I am concerned that my party, looking at the fact that reformers got these MPs now, looking at the votes they're getting, will think the way to contest reform is to copy reform, that we have to be neo-reform. And I think that is a political dead end. It is a political drain. It is the wrong way to go. And one of the reasons why it's important for what Stand Up to Racism is doing, what all of us in our different ways are doing, is we have to fight back against the tendency in the Labour Party which thinks the answer to reform is to echo reform. Thank you.
Yeah, Gary, did you want to have some thoughts after that?
Well, I guess on top of what Diane said, particularly about the international context, because it's very important to understand it in that realm, is that there is a crisis of hope. These people are bottom feeders on cynicism and despair. And that cynicism and despair comes in no small part because last July we had an election. There was a landslide on very thin calories, if you think of the kind of low turnout and the dispersal of the vote. And it wouldn't even be right to say that there's been no change. In some way, there's been an acceleration of austerity. And so people are thinking, well, what am I going to do? Now, lots of people stay home, and the people that don't stay home, some of them think, well, I will give this a chance. So that there is, I think that a lot of this, and a lot of the councillors that were interviewed afterwards said, look, it was the disability cuts, it was the 2-child cap, it was freezing out pensioners. It was a range of things that I don't think anybody who voted Labour, and these votes were, it seems, not necessarily as likely, but fairly likely to come from Labour as to come from the Conservatives, were people who just kind of, well, we didn't want this. And and it's a little bit like, I think, during the Brexit vote, where having not made the case for immigration for years, they were suddenly faced with this moment where the talk about immigration was actually going to impinge something that they wanted, which is stay in the European Union, and it was too late. And that nobody is making the case. Nobody's making the case for immigration. Nobody's saying, you know what, it's not immigrants that are putting a strain on the National Health Service, it's immigrants that are saving the National Health Service and have been doing it since 1948. They're not saying that, like, look, small boats, people coming in small boats, they're coming from Iraq, Afghanistan, and Iran. 2 countries that we bombed, and 1 country whose democracy that we've undermined. They are here to kind of, distort a bit of civility because we were there. That there is a connection between our foreign policy, including the supporting of the genocide in the Middle East, and who has to come here and why they have to come here. And so this is not kind of joined up thinking that, when you expand the money for military and you cut aid, what do you think that's going to do to people who are, who are desperate and coming to this country? And what kind of country are you trying to defend if the pensioners are freezing and the kids are hungry? What is that military for? So there is this kind of this refusal, really, to engage them on the terrain that they've chosen, and rather than do that, to pander and to talk about numbers and where from and all, in a way that is not going to solve anything for a large number of the people who have voted for reform. So I feel that there is a crisis in credibility for our political class, and that is what they are feeding on. They haven't got answers to anything, but they are feeding on despair, on bigotry, and on a kind of a desperation for something to change. And the last thing I would say is that we've had this weird 2 weeks where last week we commemorated the defeat of Nazis, and a week before, a large section of this country voted for their ideological descendants to go into Parliament. And it shouldn't be for the small number of left-wing Labour MPs or the small number of Green MPs or the handful of kind of left-wing journalists to be pointing that out. That, if electoral politics has any meaning, then that point of view should and could be represented. And I think this country is better than this. But we're not being shown any kind of leadership. When they say we talk, we're making the tough decisions. It's not a tough decision to cut a disabled person's benefits. It's not tough. It's not tough to punch down. And that's all they're doing. You want to be tough, go tell Donald Trump to take a hike. You want to be tough, go and tell Israel, stop bombing and starving and so on. We're going to stop selling arms to you. If you want to be tough, make the rich pay more for tax. If that's what you want, if you want to be tough, because our enemies, they don't come in small boats. They come in limousines and first-class travel. They extend our hours. They cut our pay. They take their bonuses and they piss off.
Yeah. Well, I do want to hear more, I guess, from both of you about the direction of the government and how that relates to the rise of reform. But I just wanted to come back to, I guess, how you were putting reform in the context of the rise of the international far right. But also, I think, the rise of the far right here in Britain more generally, because again and again, we've seen attempts by the far right to break through in Britain that thankfully have been driven back, whether that's the BNP, whether that's the EDL, whether that's UKIP and so on. And I guess a question would be, how do you think the breakthrough of reform or the rise of reform is different from those past attempts? But also if there's lessons that we can take from those previous attempts, or how we've stopped those previous attempts for how we're fighting reform today.
I think that they have made, I don't like to use the word progress, but they are moving forward in a way we've not seen before. And I think that it's partly to do, as I say, that internationally there's a context in which they, that gives them a certain amount of justification in their heads. But I also think the rise of online has made it a lot easier for people to connect, to put out their racist ideas. I think the rise of online has made far-right politics just that much easier to organise in a way it didn't used to be. I think in terms of contesting reform, I think it's very important what's going to be happening at a grassroots level, whether it's putting pressure on your local MPs and local councillors, whether it's working with the broader community. If you step out here onto Bethnal Green Road, you can see very many people, thousands of people actually, from the Asian community, the African community, the Caribbean community, and yet very few of them are in here. And what we really do have to do is make that link with communities, because they are angry, they are frightened, but elements of the left aren't really connecting with them. And if we are going to successfully get reform to back off, if we are successfully going to that Labour Party leadership to understand that they cannot be echoing reform, we have to work with the broader community. That is what will make us a strong campaign.
I think what's different now is austerity. I think that we've had 15 years. The last big rise of the BNP was like 2000, 2010. We've had this incredible rise in austerity, which has hammered individuals and communities. We've now had that passed not just through 1,000,001 leaders in the Tory party, but now being taken on by the Labour Party, and that reform is different to the BNP insofar as they come, first of all, through the Brexit campaign where they were successful, and secondly, by actually allying with a significant section of the Tory party, and by, and it won't feel like this, but you have to look back and think about what the BNP were saying with a slightly more sophisticated version of the racism. It's not racist to talk about immigration, that kind of thing. And frankly, with a more robust neoliberal agenda, which is then being has the tailwind of what is going on in the rest of the world. What was interesting, I was on holiday when it all blew up last summer, but what was interesting to me was at the beginning, from afar, thinking, where are we? All these people coming out and they're threatening asylum seekers and they're attacking mosques and so on. and then when we showed up, they disappeared. Like, we're bigger than them, we're better than them, we're better organized than them. They took us by surprise, I think. I don't know because I wasn't here, but that they can be stopped. They're not unbeatable. They're certainly not smart. But they won't be. We can't rely on the police to stop them. This is not. This is a political problem. It's not a criminal problem. They are criminals, but the problem is essentially political. And so we have to treat it as political, and we have to organize politically, and we have to fight them where they are. If they're in the streets, we fight them in the streets. If they're in Parliament, we fight them in Parliament. If they're on telly, we fight them on telly. Wherever they are, we have to fight them. And that there can be no sense of like, well, yeah, fair enough, you've got a point. We are fighting them. We are fighting for our lives. And we can see that from what is going on in the States. We can see what they would do if they could in the States. Literally snatching people off the street who've committed no crime and deporting them. Deporting people who are innocent and then saying, too bad, you can't come back. Deciding that what the courts say actually doesn't matter because I'm the big boss. So this is not some kind of, difference of opinion kind of thing. We do have a difference of opinion, but their opinion is that we don't have humanity and we are not deserving of the rights of humanity. At that point, it's an existential threat. And so, we have to organize, and we organize where we are. We organize in our communities, in our unions, in our churches and synagogues and mosques and so on. And we're focused on what we're doing. We may have differences of opinion about other things, but this needs to be a broad-based campaign. It cannot really indulge in the narcissism of relatively small differences. We are up against fascists. They will not say they are fascists. I'm minded always of Michael Rosen's poem. He says, fascists don't turn up in fancy dress. They don't turn up. They don't turn up saying, hey, we're going to set up some lagers and put. They offer you honor. They're going to clean your street. They're going to make things whole again. And so we have to fight them, both in the streets if necessary, but also rhetorically. We have to fight them, and we have to be wherever they are. And wherever they are, we have to call them out. And, I really do hope that the Labour Party, because it's the party in government, and I don't hold too many illusions. Probably you hold even less. But the Labour Party wise up to actually what this threat is. That you can't deport enough people to satisfy these people. That's not what that's about. This is not about immigration reform, actually. It's not about people in small boats. You see how they move from the enemy of the month club, and one moment it's asylum seekers hostels, and the next moment it's small boats, and it will be something else, and the next moment it will be the Roma. And we have real, and it's not the Roma that traded in bond credit swaps, and as a result, we ended up with our libraries being closed and our schools, teachers being fired and all that kind of stuff. You can't blame Syrian refugees for that, but that is exactly what they're doing. I don't think the alternative argument and the alternative the organization is hard, but the argument is not. But it's not being made at the level that we need it to be made. And it will only be made if we insist that it be made. That Frederick Douglass, the abolitionist, power concedes nothing without a demand. It never has and it never will. And so we are going to have to make demands. We're going to have to make demands around actually the welfare cuts, around housing, around all the things. An awful lot of people, not all of them, but an awful lot of people who vote for reform care about the same kind of things that I care about. Housing, welfare, education, and so on. And it's not working for them. It's not working for anybody. Difference between me and them is that I'm not blaming immigrants for that, or asylum seekers, or Muslims. I'm blaming the government and I'm blaming the rich.
Well, I think you've both spoken about, I guess, how the discussion on immigration is being dragged so far to the right, and how this government is now also, trying in some places to out-reform or to pander to reform, the kind of discussions about deportations and so on. Obviously, both said that that's not the way to undercut the far right. It only fuels their growth. But I think these local elections have shown as well a kind of fracturing in mainstream politics, where, for the biggest times in recent history, you saw votes going outside of the kind of traditional Tory and Labour to reform, or to reform mostly, but also elsewhere. And I think, Reform is now posing themselves as the opposition, replacing the Tories. They are reshaping the right in Britain, but obviously also we've discussed the role of the government in kind of creating some of the terrain in which the far right and Reform is able to build. So I was wondering if maybe, Diane, because you've been so outspoken on this, within Parliament as well, about actually what you think the government should be doing, and where the failures are taking us.
I think one of the issues around racism is the extent to which it's being gradually normalized. Issues that once upon a time people were, making the argument, going on a demonstration, going to the rally. That's one thing, but it's the normalization of racism, which is really alarming. And it's the extent to which people at a grassroots are not being able to encourage, to strengthen, to support it, to take the case against racism. And the danger is that as we normalize racism, we don't go forward and we don't unite. We don't unite. I think one of the things at this time is it's worse, as you say, because of what's the media, the elements of the Labour leadership, but it's the normalization, and it's as if, certainly inside politics, formal politics, there's almost like, it's not very good, but we have to stop normalizing it. And we have to remember, as Gary is saying, that the threat, it's not just someone getting up in a meeting and saying something that you disagree with. It's a real physical threat to us in here in this meeting, but to other people, other communities, other issues. And it's so important that we stop normalizing it, that we come together as between people of color and other ethnic groups. It's not, fighting reform isn't just about, they're over there. Fighting reform is knowing that the elements of the fight against the reform is amongst us. It's amongst us, and it's being legitimized. And if we just let things stand still or even go backwards, it's a very fearful, it's a very dark time. So as I say, we have to organize with each other. We have to organize, as I say, with the greater communities out there. Because sometimes there's almost like on the one hand, there's the activists. On the other hand, you've got Africans, Caribbean, Bangladeshis involved in their communities and their campaigns. And there's a danger that those two things are a little bit slightly not together. What we have to do is to pull together the politics, the community, and go forward. Because the danger is that if we splinter, if we are not reaching out to each other, we are necessarily weakened. So, yeah, I think it's so important that we come together, that the people out in the street on Bethel Lagoon Road are actually coming out and campaigning and working with the people in this room. I think that is an important thing if we're going to move forward against reform.
Yeah, so, well, I was just going to say, off the back of some of what you were saying, Diane, about the normalization of racism, because I think obviously we've seen great resistance in recent years, namely Black Lives Matter. We've seen all the rights that we've fought for, hard fought for, and won, around racism. But I think now we're witnessing, I think, one of the most concerted attempts to roll us back on every single thing that we've won, whether that's, Trump in the US, the attacks on DEI, which obviously we're seeing from reform here, like the reform mayor coming out saying that we're going to scrap every DEI stuff that doesn't even exist in the Lincolnshire Council, this kind of scapegoating of things that aren't there, this kind of Trumpism. But I think that, well, obviously, two people that have spoken very powerfully about, I guess, growing up Black in Britain, but how far backwards do you think we've gone?
See, I don't think of it as being as linear as that. There's a range of ways in which we've gone forward, right? And one of the ways that you can tell that is that nowadays no one will admit to being a racist. We have racism, but no racists. It's amazing. It's like magic. And I feel that it's really important because we're not going to be able to dispense. There's a great African proverb: "Be careful when a naked man offers you his shirt," right? Because if he had a shirt, he would wear it, right? So we can't offer hope if we don't have hope, and we should have hope. And our hope should be in the fact that we have been here before, not exactly in this place, but in this kind of place, 58, after the pogroms in 58. For example, in the 70s with the NF, in Southall, in Brixton, in a range of places, and we've rose up. And 2020 is an important moment because it shows the potential. And not just our own potential, but the potential of the country in a certain moment. But it also tells us that these things ebb and flow. And so they're coming for us right now. And we're on the back foot right now, I would say. But you can cut down the flowers, but you cannot stop the spring. That we are moving forward. We have to move forward. And we have to move forward with a sense of hope that this country is better than this and that we can be better than this. And the thing that we lack, the thing that I think 2020 showed us about more than anything, was that we can get our capacity to get huge numbers of people out on the street is not contested, right? And we've done it before and we can do it again. Our ability to keep them there, to organize them, to incubate that energy and then take it forward, that we have a problem with. We have proven the capacity to clear space, political space. We have not proven the capacity to build on that space. And that is what we really have to work at, I think, is our organizational capacity, our ability to kind of sustain it, knowing that once we've defeated these gits, and we will, because we don't have any choice, there will be more gits, right? And so we can't be caught napping. We have to keep going. And that, that takes an orientation, really. It takes an understanding of racism as not being something that Farage invented, but something that he is the product of, and that has a long-standing tradition in this country, as does anti-racism. And so, we have met before. Farage is a version of the Mosleys and the Powells and the so on, and there'll be more after him, and there'll be more like me and you after them. And if you look at it historically, we have prevailed historically. We are in a better place now than we were in the 50s. We have won a lot of things. And of course, power concedes nothing. So they're always trying to take it back. They're trying to take back the rhetoric. They're trying to have conversations that they could never have had 20 years ago. They feel, when they say you can't even say such and such nowadays, it's like, well, first of all, you just said it. So obviously you can. But secondly, nobody's stopping you saying it. It's just that then nobody's stopping me calling you a racist if you say it. Like, you can have freedom of speech, but you cannot be free from the responsibilities of your speech, which is what they don't like. Yeah. I do have a question for Diane, though. You're listening to a special episode of Over the Top, Under the Radar, where we can bring you a recording of a recent Stand Up to Racism event. We have the platform to do this because of your support. The team and I make this podcast because we believe that there's an audience out there of people just like us, like you, who are being failed by so-called mainstream media. And that audience consists of people who are comfortable with unashamedly progressive perspectives and a sense of humour and irony. If you enjoy the pod and find value in what we do, please consider donating. The packages start at just £5 plus VAT a month. And if you already donate, please consider upgrading your membership. Search Over the Top, Under the Radar on Patreon. And please, put your money where your ears are. Let's go back to Stand Up to Racism's panel with Samira Ali and Diane Abbott. I do have a question for Diane, though, which is it's not a hostile question, but it's about the Labour left. Because we know there is a Labour left. There was, Corbyn happened. It happened for a reason, and some people are still in it. But I'm genuinely interested. Is there a plan? Are you guys meeting? Is there some coordination or strategy to engage this moment on the left in Labour, both in Parliament and outside?
Yes, I mean, in Parliament, MPs who are on the left meet every week. And one of the things we're really focused on is how we challenge and how we move forward in the current in the Labour Party that thinks the way to beat reform is to sound more like reform. Because obviously, that's where we are. We're in the party, but no, the Labour Party is meeting, but and we are organising. But what is striking about Farage is Farage gets endless publicity. You don't hear from the left. We're not given that sort of time and space in the media, not at all. It's Farage and reform. And even, to be fair, the Greens, the left organisations, they don't get that time and space. So yes, we are meeting, we are organising. The fact that you don't see us on Newsnight doesn't mean to say we're not meeting.
I don't watch Newsnight, but I'm glad to hear it. I mean, I just think that it comes back to the hope thing. I want to say is that I was in the States just for a few days in January, and a friend of mine who's not particularly involved was kind of saying, what should I do? And I said, I can't tell you what to do. I can tell you that doing nothing is a problem. But I feel that there are large numbers of people in the country who see what we see. But they're either doom scrolling or they're just avoiding the news. If I don't watch it, maybe it hasn't happened. Or they're bitching about it with their friends. And they are waiting and hoping that somebody else takes it up. And that somehow we have to get across a sense of urgency in this moment. That, in the words of June Jordan, the African-American feminist, we are the ones that we've been waiting for. And now is the time. That wait too long and it will be too late. Which is how some people feel in America right now. Well, I don't know. I don't know if I can do that because I don't know how bad the consequences will be. Well, we're not there yet, but that's where we're headed. And so now would be the time. And I do think that sense of urgency is not quite. I think we have to do more to convey that like individuals may resist, but resistance is collective. Yeah. So you need to join something. Stand Up to Racism would be a good example, but like it could be something that you organize in your church or your synagogue or your mosque or your union or whatever. But like, do something, and now would be the time.
Yeah. No, I think that is a good hopeful note, because I think we have to recognize how urgent the threat is and can do more to convey that, but then also remember that the vast majority of people in this country did not vote reform. The vast majority of people in this country are the people who took to the streets against the riots. The vast majority of people are anti-racist, but it's a question of getting those people organized collectively. And thanks for doing a plug for us. Please do get involved with Stand Up to Racism.
You're listening to an over-the-top, under-the-radar special episode with Diane Abbott and I, responding to the recent successes of Reform UK in the May local elections. You can watch a live stream of the whole event on the Stand Up to Racism channel. I'll be back next week with Caris as usual, and you can find us all over socials, be it Blue Sky, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, or X at over_under_pod_.